To say this week was a rough week for Detroit sports overall as a whole would be a massive understatement. And of course, for the Red Wings, the NHL trade deadline also came and went, and they made quite a few moves, and we'll touch on those moves at the very end of the video. But yeah, let's go ahead and let's jump into this week's Detroit sports recap and see how everyone fared in this tough week. Nope, nothing to see from the Pistons here. Nothing here, just tanks beyond the eye can see, other than Jay Ivey trying to carry this team as much as he can. Still isn't enough. They looked pretty bad in almost every game this week. The only game they actually looked good in was the game against the Bulls, because it's the fucking Bulls and the rivalry game. In the end, despite the Pistons' best efforts against your toilet, still wasn't enough to get the job done. But hey, I'll give them kudos for at least fighting back from a massive deficit to try and win it. In the end, just was not meant to be. And then Cleveland, yeah, that game against Cleveland, less said about it, the better. That was just a horrible game. But yeah, as the Pistons continue their great tank for Victor Wembanyama, as currently the Pistons are in prime position potentially to get him in the lottery. As the Pistons are currently tied for last place in the NBA with the Houston Rockets. So this is probably going to be a repeat of 2021 maybe, when the Pistons got Cade Cunningham, when the Rockets and the Pistons were the two worst teams in the league. Time will tell. We'll find out this summer. You know what's sad for Detroit sports this week? When the best fucking team this week was the fucking Tigers in preseason. As the Tigers actually did some things in preseason. They actually looked pretty solid in preseason. Granted, a bit inconsistent, because they had a bunch of good games, and then in turn they had a bunch of bad games. The bad games were capped off with a massive 18-5 loss to the Blue Jays. Of course, it's spring training, so wins and losses in spring training really don't fucking mean anything. It's just player evaluation and just testing and tuning for the regular season. I mean, we'll see how good this Tigers team truly is come start of April for the season. You know, we'll see how it is when they play the Rays and a bunch of good teams early in the year. But yeah, that's kind of pretty sad and embarrassing when the fucking Tigers in preseason was the best team this week. Why do you have to be so inconsistent, Red Wings? Now to the Red Wings. Yeah, remember the last few weeks how we talked about how the Red Wings playoff hopes look pretty strong after some pretty solid weeks throughout much of the last couple months? Yeah, this week it took a massive turn, as this week was so terrible that the Wings might have just destroyed whatever hopes they had, whatever slim hopes they had left. Because the Red Wings had 5 games. And out of those 5, the Wings won a total of 0. The week started off with the Red Wings losing back-to-back games in Ottawa. Of course, the Red Wings had back-to-back games because one of those games was supposed to be in December. And yeah, and then there was a massive snowstorm that hit Ontario. And that game got pushed back to now. And yeah, the Red Wings look pretty fucking bad in both those games against Ottawa, because both games the Red Wings got the literal shit stomped out of them. As the Ottawa Senators in those 2 games outscored the Wings 12-3. Jesus Christ, that's fucking embarrassing to be blown out by a team like Ottawa like that twice in 2 nights. Hell, it was so bad to where Brady Tkachuk, the Sens captain, challenged the entire Red Wings bench to step up, and when the Red Wings bench failed to take advantage of it, he went on and told all the Red players on the Red Wings that none of them can fucking handle it. Yeah, it got that bad. And of course, there were a couple of close losses, though, other than that. They played really good against Seattle. Just in the end, Seattle just was a better team, and they got the job done in overtime. So Seattle swept the season series. And then they had a couple other ugly losses, like the Islanders game. They had a slim lead entering the third period, only for the Red Wings to completely collapse in the third period and give up 4 unanswered goals in the third to have the Islanders shit stomp them. Damn. And then they had a quick early lead against Philadelphia. Nope, not anymore. Philadelphia rallied back to score 3 unanswered as the Red Wings suffered another collapse. Man, that's pretty sad. The Red Wings have looked like fucking playoff contenders the last couple weeks, and this week they turn into complete fucking goop. I mean, that's the story of the Red Wings season this year. One moment they look good. Next moment they get completely shit stomped back to reality. Despite the progress the Red Wings have made, still not good enough. Unfortunately for the Wings, they don't play in the Western Conference no more. Because if they did play in the Western Conference, they probably could still make the playoffs no problem. Because the Western Conference is fucking weak as shit this year. Sadly for the Wings, they don't play in the West. They play in the East. And the East is a fucking brutal bloodbath. But yeah, I mean, the only real highlight this week was not only the trade deadline, but of course, the end of the Dylan Larkin contract saga. Because we've seen it the last couple months throughout this season. What would happen with Larkin in his contract situation? Would Steve have to pay him or not to pay him? And Steve and Larkin were in deep contract negotiations as they were trying to negotiate a fair deal for both parties. In the end, the old saying has been, when the captain knocks at your door, you better answer. And Larkin did answer a door, metaphorically and literally, as Larkin and Stevie Y would sign the contract in Larkin's kitchen. As yes, the saga is finally over, as Dylan Larkin has finally signed an extension to stay in the Red Wing uniform for probably the rest of his career. As they've agreed on a deal. The deal, an 8-year contract worth with an $8.7 million cap hit a year, which keeps Larkin in with the wing wheel into his mid-30s. I'm not going to complain about the cap hit too much. That's actually a fair deal, because I did say go for around $8.5 million. I mean, $8.7 million, not too far off. A little more than I probably would have gone for. I would have probably stayed at 8.5, but, you know, hey, at least they agreed on a fair deal. Like, hell, if it was over $9 million, I would have flipped fucking shit. But hey, you know, Larkin and Stevie Y were able to negotiate, and the saga's finally over. Larkin staying with the Wings for 8 more years. Thank fucking God that saga is finally over. Thank God, now we no longer have that distraction for the rest of the year. Thank God. Maybe that's why the Wings have been pretty bad this week, because maybe that contract saga was distracting them. It's a plausibility, but I highly doubt it. You know, but, you know, Larkin still played pretty well. Like, Larkin's played very well. He deserves the extension. Well deserved for him. Now let Larkin cook. And now, with the contract negotiation out of the way, Steve Yzerman can now focus his attention to the trade deadline. Of course, before we wrap this recap up, we will talk about the trade deadline. As for the Wings, they made quite a few moves here, because this week proved that the Wings were nowhere near being a contender. So Steve Yzerman decided that they were going to be sellers for this time for real, as a bunch of players got thrown on the trade block, and Stevie Y decided it was everything must go. As yeah, the Wings have officially thrown in the towel in the season, despite being very close to the wild card picture and being close to a playoff spot and having a winning record. In the end, still not good enough, because you're in the goddamn Eastern Conference and not in the West. In the end, the Wings, they made a couple small moves to start off. Mainly, Oscar Sundqvist was dealt to the Minnesota Wild for a 4th-round pick. And in the end, things just weren't working out with Jacob Verana with his health issues and all that stuff, and failing to crack an AHL roster in the end. Steve Eisman decided to just cut his losses and just get whatever he could for him, with his value diminishing every second he stayed in Detroit. As in the end, Vrana was traded to the St. Louis Blues for pennies on the dollar. For 100% they could have got more for Vrana, but with Vrana's situation coming into this, like, his value all but diminished. So Waynes were honestly lucky to get even that for this situation. But hey, Steve Eisman just cut his losses and got whatever he could instead of having let him go for nothing. So I guess that's a fair deal. But of course, everyone knows the Waynes need to make a splash, and Steve Eisman's been known at making splashes. The first big splash, the Waynes would make a stunning trade, as they would trade Filip Hronek and a 4th-round pick to the Vancouver Canucks. In exchange, the Waynes get the Canucks' 4th-round pick this year, and they get a conditional 1st-round pick from the Canucks. Really? A 1st-round pick in exchange for Filip Hronek? Hronek isn't even the best defenseman on the Waynes, and we got a 1st-round pick for him? Well, damn. Stevie Y fleecing the Canucks. Damn, maybe Jim Benning wasn't the problem in Vancouver after all. His teams are still fleecing the Canucks. Now for this 1st-round pick the Waynes got from the Canucks, this 1st-round pick is property Islanders, because this is the pick that the Canucks got from the Islanders in the Bo Horvat trade. So that Bo Horvat trade is now a 3-team trade, with the Waynes getting involved. So, of course, the 1st-round pick, it's a conditional one because it's a lottery-protected pick. Since a lot of 1st-round picks this year are lottery-protected, because this is the Connor Bedard draft, and it's a pretty deep draft. And yeah, it's a lottery pick. It's a top 12 protected pick. But if the Islanders retain the pick this year, the Waynes would get the Islanders' 1st-round pick next year in 2024, which will be unprotected. And there's a good chance that so the Waynes only get the pick this year if it's 13th or lower. Okay. So yeah, odds are the Islanders, they may or may not make the playoffs. We'll have to see what happens there, but there's a good chance that Islanders pick is probably going to be in the mid to late teens. We're going to have to see what happens. Even if the Islanders do make the playoffs this year, they're probably going to get blown out in the 1st round by the Bruins. Or maybe they win a couple games against the Hurricanes. We'll have to see. But of course, the big question was, since the Waynes signed Dylan Larkin, it meant that Tyler Bertuzzi was not going to be back. There was no way they could afford to keep both with the cap hit. Steve Eisman had to make a choice, either Larkin or Bertuzzi. And with Eisman signing Larkin to his 8-year extension, that meant that Bertuzzi had to go, unfortunately. It sucks, but that's part of the game, You gotta make tough choices sometimes, even when it's not a popular choice. So in the end, Tyler Bertuzzi, who wasn't even gonna be back with the Waynes next year, has been dealt, as he is now a Boston Bruin. So he was dealt in exchange to Waynes get a 4th-round pick from the Bruins. Oh, wait, for the Canucks trade. Did I say it was a 4th-round pick? I meant to say 2nd-round pick. My bad. But anyway, back on topic. Alright, sorry about the Canucks, pick, though. I know I'm human. I make mistakes. But yeah, back to the Bruins pick. Back to the Bruins trade. So Bertuzzi was dealt to the Bruins in exchange for a 4th-round pick in 2025. And they got a 1st-round pick from the Bruins in 2024. Now, I believe that pick is a top 10 protected pick, so it's kind of a conditional 1st. So Boston will retain the pick if it's 2020, if it's top 10 in 2024. But we probably don't have to worry about that stipulation because Boston's going to be fucking good for years to come because it's the Boston sports, and Boston sports are usually pretty good right now. Especially the Bruins and the Celtics this year. The Bruins are probably the favorite for the Cup this year. And I think the Celtics are winning the NBA championship this year. But, yeah. I think the Bruins might become the first team since the 2013 Blackhawks to win the President's Trophy and the Stanley Cup in the same year. Especially when the Bruins are getting comparisons to the 2002 Red Wings. And let me just say this for the Red Wings. That 2002 Red Wings team, not only did they win the President's Trophy, they also won the Cup that same year. But yeah, anyway, back to the trade though. That's actually a pretty solid value for Bertuzzi. Even though Bertuzzi had issues, stayed healthy early in the year, he still played pretty well recently. So they got a solid first-round pick. Even though that pick from the Bruins, it's probably going to be in the mid to late 20s. So yeah, that's kind of the downside. But I don't think it really matters where the pick is, because we have Steve Yzerman as GM, and Stevie Y will still find a way to get the best player in the draft at that pick. Same deal. But yeah, the Wings now will have 4 first-round picks over the next 3 years. And depending on what happens with the Islanders, there is a hypothetical scenario where in 2024, potentially the Wings could have 3 first-round picks in 2024, should the Islanders retain their first-round pick this year. We'll have to see what happens there, but, Wayne they got 4 first-round picks in the next 2 years, and they also have 3 second-round picks this year. So the Wayne's got some cap to play with here in the draft, and especially since this year's draft class is fucking loaded past Connor Bedard. This is a loaded draft class this year, where it's mainly highlighted by Connor Bedard. Who knows? Maybe the Wings get lucky and move up into the top 3 in the lottery. Sadly, though, I believe the Wings are 12th in the draft order, so they're not eligible for the first overall pick, because for the draft lottery, you can only move up a maximum of 10 spots, because they changed the lottery rules after the NHL fucked the Red Wings over in 2020 from Lafreniere. Yeah, of course the NHL changes the fucking rules after they fucked Detroit over. That ain't surprising in the fucking slightest. But yeah, the Wayne situation, though, they're probably going to end up with the pick in the early to mid-teens. And depending on what happens with the Islanders, that pick's probably going to be in the mid-teens too. So both picks in the mid-teens, so that's going to be interesting. We'll see what Stevie Y can do to cook up there in the draft this year. But yeah, that's just the Waynes this year. They're nowhere near good enough to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. However, they're nowhere near bad enough to get a top draft pick unless they somehow get lucky in the lottery. But considering the Red Wings' history in the draft lottery, that's probably not going to happen. I think wherever the Wings are in the draft order, that's probably where they're going to end up drafting in the end. I don't see the Wings jumping into the top 3, even though they desperately need a top player in this draft. They need to find a way to get, the Wings definitely need some lottery luck, but, if you have a GM like Stevie Y, it doesn't really matter where you pick in the draft, because the draft is a total fucking crapshoot. Just because you draft a player first or second overall, that doesn't guarantee anything. It just means high expectations. But, yeah, if you have the right guys calling the shots, you can get any fucking talented player anywhere in the draft. Just look at guys like Setterberg and Datsuk. They were both 6th and 7th round picks respectively. Hell, Nicholas Lindstrom was a fucking 3rd round pick. Hell, that's just some examples right there where you can find fucking talent anywhere in the draft. Hell, Dylan Larkin was a fucking 16th overall pick. He was taken in the mid-teens. Like I mentioned, you can find talent anywhere in the draft if you have the right guys calling the shots in the front office. So yeah, Stevie Y, he's got some work to do with this offseason, but they're slowly building this team the right way. As Steve Yzerman said in his press conference that he's not looking to build a team to win just one cup. He wants to build a dynasty with the Red Wings. and build a team that can win at least 2 or 3 cups. He doesn't want to be just a one-hit wonder. He wants to be a multi-hit wonder. Kind of like the old Red Wings teams of old that won multiple cups in their time. Time will tell if Steve Yzerman can get there. But for now, the Wings are just stuck in purgatory right now and spinning the top wheels and doing some tire spinning. But yeah, that's pretty bad this week, So the Wings leave this week on a 6-game losing streak as their playoff hopes slowly slip away. This team, it just looked like they had potential the last couple weeks. Only in the end for it to be a cock tease. Damn.